Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the New Legend podcast. Thanks for checking in. Today we have a very, very special guest and a special episode. This is going to be one of a two-part series where we sit down with Fred Williams from the MotorTrend channel. Has a show called Dirt Every Day. Sincere, funny, attractive guy who is a good friend of ours, and we're really excited. Thanks, Fred, for sitting down with us. Man, we talk wheeling, overlanding, car tech. We talk about how and why humans were meant for adventure. So anyway, give a listen, give a share. These are going to be some great episodes. So week 1, sit down with Fred. Week 2, sit down with Fred. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by Free Spirit Recreation, FSR. If you've ever dreamed about sleeping in a rooftop tent, or had the pleasure to sleep in a rooftop tent, or are just thinking about a better way to camp, go check out Free Spirit Recreation. Game changer, in my opinion, to be up off the ground, to be safe, and to do it in a high quality, well-built platform is why we love FSR. Innovative products. You see them on our Instagram and our videos. They've definitely enhanced our adventures and trips. So go check them out if you think about it. If you have any questions, shoot us a message, man. We'll answer whatever we can. And they are easy to talk to as well. So you can go check out Free Spirit Recreation or FSR. Get on the road, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the New Legend podcast. I'm here with a very, very special guest and a good friend of mine, Fred Williams.
How you doing?
This is I'm excited about this, man, because we've been friends for it's been growing for the last couple of years, 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
And it's just funny how we see each other. I remember once at the Phoenix airport.
Oh yeah.
It was just
We're
chilling.
always kind of just crossing paths. We did a Dirt Every Day episode out at your shop probably a year ago now.
One of the best episodes yet.
Oh yes, the highest ranked one.
That's right.
Because every scout person tuned in.
Yeah, they did. I still get people
all 1,600 of you.
Yeah, exactly. I had some random dude come into the shop the other day and like these trucks, because the Scout House is at my shop.
Oh yeah.
So dude, that's the Scout House, and hey, that truck over there looks familiar. How do I know these trucks? I'm like, Dirt Every Day. And they're like, yeah, man, that's crazy. And they were really dumbfounded that the connection existed.
Stuff is around in real life.
So yeah, let's back up just a little bit. Fred is the co-host.
I'm the host.
Host of...
I have a co-host now, so I guess we're both the hosts, but I started a show called Dirt Every Day.
Yes. And so we're going to kind of dig into that. You are an avid off-road enthusiast.
I've always been into trucks and 4x4s.
Yes.
And I started out at an off-road magazine. Actually, before that, I started out as a freelance writer for an off-road magazine. And then I worked at an off-road magazine called Peterson's 4-Wheel and Off-Road Magazine. And then around 2013, started doing videos as part of the MotorTrend YouTube channel. And they had been doing MotorTrend shows for a while, but it was all kind of new car stuff.
Yeah.
And then my good friend David Freiberger started a show called Roadkill with Mike Finnegan. And that was kind of more my speed, because it was less about stock vehicles and more about weird modified vehicles.
Yeah.
And it actually turned out that the third episode of Roadkill was filmed at an event we did at Peterson's 4-Wheel and Off-Road called Cheap Truck Challenge.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I was right there in the neighborhood when Roadkill started, and I remember going back to the office and saying, this is cool, but you guys need an off-road show.
Yeah.
And Freiberger was like, you don't want to even suggest that because they'll make you do the work and not give you any extra money. And I was like, well, I'm not looking to be on it. I just think that it needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I actually went to a guy named Angus he was the top of the ladder at MotorTrend and was like, why don't you guys have an off-road show? And he was like, I'll think about it. And then probably 3 or 6 months later, he was like, called me into his office and was like, we want you to do this show.
And at that time, Fred, did MotorTrend own Peterson's? Or
well, at that time, there was a publishing company that owned all the magazines.
Okay.
MotorTrend was just one of our magazines.
Oh, okay.
But it was kind of the pinnacle magazine because it had the biggest budget, had the most people, but their whole deal was just new cars. Like they weren't building hot rods or building anything. In fact, if you really go back, Robert Peterson, the man that started Hot Rod, and you may know him from the Peterson Museum in Los Angeles, Peterson Publishing, he's the one that started all of it.
Wow.
He started Hot Rod, then he started MotorTrend, and then in the 70s, he started Peterson's Four-Wheel and Off-Road magazine, and it went through a lot of different publishing companies. I never actually got to meet the man, and
really?
I never actually got to work for Robert Peterson, but you talk to everybody in the magazine business, and they're like, oh, that was the glory days. He had a yacht and had a hunting ranch and would have big parties, and like he had the top floor of the publishing building, and everybody else worked on the other floors.
Yeah.
And I got to work in the Peterson building, and then the company moved down to El Segundo. And it's been through a bunch of different publishing companies. The most recent one was 10, the Enthusiast Network.
Okay.
And, but MotorTrend was just one of the magazines.
Yeah.
And then they had a YouTube channel, and then Roadkill started, and then I suggested an off-road show, and then they said, well, why don't you do it? And then I was like, well, I'll do it, and I guess, and let's call it Dirt Every Day.
Yeah, which is like a genius transition of print to like a new medium in YouTube, like, or just video. At the time, it was YouTube, but because a lot of magazines have just gone away because they weren't able to successfully.
The genius behind it is David Freiberg.
Yeah, that's right.
Like there are a lot of other people involved. Like don't get me wrong, like Mike Suggett and Angus and Ed Lowe and all these guys that would like do videos about cars. Mm-hmm. But there's nobody that holds a light to what David Freiberger can see. Like he sees stuff 3 steps ahead of everybody. Awesome. And all of those video shows where it was just like, here is a new car. It gets 16 miles per gallon. Right. Or it's like 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Like that's neat. But Freiberger is just like, no, let's have fun. Let's build crazy, wacky cars. And I was like, I want to have fun.
Yeah, revolutionary.
And I have a lot of friends in the magazine that were like, you made the right choice by jumping to video. And I was like, I didn't think about it like that.
Right.
I was just like, there needs to be a video show for off-roading because cars are two-dimensional. They're like speed, braking, G-forces side to side. Like, and it's all on asphalt. Yep. And then like trucks are 3-dimensional because it's like you can jump them and you can like go under things and like there's dust and it's like just more.
Yeah.
It's like cars and like it's funny because everybody knows cars because everybody drives cars, but like not like the number of people that do off-road versus the number of people that do cars, like it's a much smaller audience.
Right.
But to me, it's a more dynamic thing to watch. So Roadkill's bigger because more people can relate to it.
Right.
But Dirt Every Day, I think, has some pretty dedicated fans because once you've kind of done off-road stuff,
right,
it's hard to back up to asphalt. It's
and I can like, dude, I don't think I've ever met anyone that's like a real like wheeling enthusiast that like doesn't know about the show or know about you. So that's kudos to you guys for promoting a lot of good things. So let's back up because there's so many things I want to talk about. But let's back up a little bit. Like we were saying earlier, like being aware of like the culture that surrounds us. There's a lot of like complexities to. Is it about like is it community? Is it other like other forces that inhibit or help people be successful or get to the like fulfill their kind of dreams and goals? Or is it like more individual, like personal responsibility, hard work? And I'm sure I know it's like both, but your story is pretty interesting in that, like, you think like, oh, Fred just like woke up one day and he was an editor and then he was all of a sudden a host of Your Day Every Day. But there was a lot of like sacrifice and steps. So dig into that, like a kid from small town Pennsylvania, like how you made that journey.
All right. So I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania, and I wanted a Jeep. There were a couple guys that worked on the farm that had trucks, and maybe like one guy had a Blazer on 33s, but I was like, I'm a Jeep guy. I don't even know why.
Right.
I was just like,
That's awesome.
And honestly, I got that just from reading magazines.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad telling me one day, he was like, if you didn't waste all your money buying those magazines, you could buy a Jeep. Which ironically,
That's
I ended
hilarious.
up running the magazine one day.
Right.
But so I just wanted a Jeep, and I remember my folks bought a car that my brothers and I could drive, and it was a Volkswagen, and I was like, I want a Jeep. And my dad's like, you want a Jeep? You earn your money and buy a Jeep. And I bought my first Jeep at probably 17, and it was $650.
And what was it?
It was a CJ5,
Okay.
304. And
Good rig.
In Pennsylvania, in order to drive a vehicle like that on the street, you have to pass state inspection.
Yep.
And that Jeep never passed state inspection.
Too rusty.
It was too rusty, and things didn't work. And I spent another $650 getting it as far as I could get it. And I was like, I can't afford this thing. And at some point I was like, I guess I'll sell it. And I sold it. And I think my dad was like, good. He got it out of his system.
Right.
And nope. Because the next thing you know, I bought a CJ7 for $1,000. And this thing that I was doing at 17, 18 is why I did Cheap Truck Challenge at the magazine. Because the whole point of Cheap Truck Challenge is you're a kid, you work all summer long doing flipping burgers or mowing lawns or working on a farm or helping your parents at their store, doing whatever. You can probably scrape together $2,000. So our goal was every year we did Cheap Truck Challenge, we set the budget as the year. So when we did it in 2015, you had $2,015 to buy a vehicle.
Yeah.
And then the idea was you bought this vehicle, you had it for a year. The next summer, you got another $2,015 to fix it up.
Okay.
And this is all just because, that's what I did. I saved my money and bought a pile of junk, and I threw a bunch of money at it and, tried to... In fact, I didn't even have $2,000 in it back then.
Right.
But the idea was... what can we do to show people how to get into four-wheeling and off-roading so that when we do a build with Dynatrac axles and an LS3 engine and it's a $100,000 rock crawler build or new JK or whatever, that turns a lot of people off. So at the magazine, I was like, we got to balance this. We have to balance these high-end builds with these budget builds. So the budget build is getting the person in the door. I can relate to that. And my aspiration is this, your New Legend stuff. It's those things are pinnacle cars, but you need something to work towards.
That's right.
And so Cheap Truck was always get it in the, and it was funny because we kind of were playing off our sister magazine, Four Wheeler, had an event called Top Truck Challenge.
That's right. Okay.
So we were we'll do the other end of the spectrum because Peterson's Four Wheel and Off Road was always kind of the dirt bags, where Four Wheeler was kind of the wine and cheese group. And it's kind of unfortunate because nowadays, Peterson's Four Wheel and Off Road is it's just an online, it's not a print magazine.
Oh, it isn't?
The only print magazine we now have is Four Wheeler.
Wow.
And I say we still have, and I'm not even a part of that. I'm kind of part of the parent business, but I always felt and Four Wheeler, to give him credit, has been around longer. In fact, I think Four Wheeler magazine came out, and Robert Peterson was like, I need an off-road magazine. And so he did Peterson's Four Wheel and Off-Road magazine. But I guess the point of all this is that Cheap Truck Challenge all refers back to what I did as a kid, which was like I wanted a Jeep. I just saved up my money. My parents didn't just like, oh, here's a check.
That's right.
Here's your new Jeep.
Yep.
It was like, you want it, go get it. You want your own Jeep, you got to pay your own insurance. You want to drive this Volkswagen Jetta we gave you, like we'll help you out. But you want to do all this stuff for your ego and thinking it's cool and fun. It's like, and my dad, like there's days where I'm like, he was just using reverse psychology on me to try and like help me so I would learn to not do it. But like he wasn't in the shop showing me how to work on this stuff. He was like, don't know how to work on it? Like, go buy a service manual.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I did that. And like, I still tell people that. It's like, I get kids all the time. They're like, well, what engine do I get that I put in this? It was like, have you read the service manual on just how to like fix it and keep it running? Like, that's going to be your cheapest option.
Yeah.
So I grew up on a farm, driving tractors, and the idea of big tires was just inherent to me from being on a farm.
Okay, that's an interesting tie-in.
And then like the open top vehicle was just like all the farm equipment I drove. And then I needed a Jeep, and then I got a Jeep, and then I sold a Jeep and went to college, and then I got out of...
Did you sell the CJ7 while you were in college, or you?
I sold the CJ7 to go to college.
Okay.
And in fact, I sold it, and a couple of years later, I was talking to my mom and was like, I really want another Jeep. And she was like, well, why did you sell that one? I said, well, you told me I had to sell it to go to school. Oh, we could have figured out a way around it, which is like,
yeah.
Come on. But I mean, honestly, like that was the deal. Like my parents, they have given me a lot in my life, but they couldn't write the check for everything.
Right.
And it's like, I had student loans and I needed to pay my tuition. So the car that I bought was a car that I sold to go to college. And then when I got out of college, I was like, well, I want another car. And then I bought another Jeep.
And so you went to college. What did you get your degree in?
I have an art degree.
Art degree, okay.
I went to a liberal arts school because I was the youngest of 4 boys, and all of my brothers went to school. And so I was like, well, I guess I should go to school. There was a lot of things I did as a kid just because I didn't know there were other options. I mean, maybe I did, but I was just kind of like following kind of what my older brothers did. And I went to this school, and I was taking different classes. It's a liberal arts school. And after I took some classes, I was like, I like the art classes. They're fun. Mm-hmm. Which, looking at me now, like I could have just went and been a mechanic or a plumber or any sort of hands-on, and probably would have been making $100,000 in like a couple of years. But instead, I had all this student loan debt. But I went to school and I got an art degree, and I remember my parents were like, "That's dumb," and it was just part of my life. Like my trajectory throughout, from when I left home till about where I'm at now, was just like, well, I can go this way and make money, or I can go this way and have fun. Well, I guess I'll go this way. And then I would be worried about money all day long. And then I would be like, another decision. Do I stay over here and make money, or here and I'm going to go have fun? And I would just follow the fun. And like everybody thinks that you're just like, you left the farm and became a TV personality. It's like, no, there
was some like, I appreciate that decision-making process, but at the same time, there was hard work and sacrifice. So talk about like, how did you get into like getting the job at Peterson?
Well, I lived in North Carolina, and then I moved to Colorado, and then I left Colorado and ended up in Oregon. That's where I ran out of money. And then I started freelance writing.
Okay.
And on the way to, there was a section of my life for about 2.5 months where I just lived in my car and drove around. And I don't care what anybody thinks, that's the best thing that you can do for any kid.
That's cool.
Like, I think, I don't have kids, so I can make this assumption or this decree. When your kids graduate from high school, they better have their passport, and I think you should give them a gas card and say, go see America.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like, just go live out of your car, sleep in your van, sleep in the bed of your truck. And I don't think this is just for young boys. I think men or women, like, go see the world, go see America. And like, even if you're home in 2 months and then you go to college, it's like,
Right.
you need that. You need to kind of like, you don't realize what our country has. And that's what I did. I broke up with a girl. She dumped me and I was like miserable. And I was in Denver and my buddy was like, well, you can't stay here because this is where all the, for better or worse, the pussies ended up in Denver. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, that's where all the people in the Conestoga wagon were crossing America and they saw the Rockies and they were like,
stopped.
screw that. We're not going over that.
That's
he
a
said,
good
you got to
analogy.
go west. You got to just go see it. And so I was like, all right. So I got in my car with all my stuff and I drove out west, and then I went down to San Diego and I drove all the way up the coast, and then I flew to Hawaii and I came back to Oregon, and I had no money, and I was like, well, I guess I need to get a job. And so I got a job, and on that drive, I ran into a guy named Ned Bacon, who was a writer for Four Wheeler magazine.
Okay.
And I just called him up out of the blue and was like, I want to come see your trucks, and I want to talk to you about magazines, and I want to da-da-da. And he invited me over, which I don't know why he would, but he did, because I don't think I would do that today. If some random kid called me and was like, I want to come see your house, I'd be like, get away. But I went there and talked to him for a couple hours, and then when I left there, one of the things I did was I asked him, I said, how did you get in the magazine job?
Oh, okay.
And he thought I was asking, how can I get it in the magazine? When in reality, I just wondered, how did you end up doing this? And he was like, oh, you want to write for the magazine? Call Rick Payway. Tell him I sent you.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, well, I can't do that. I'm not qualified. Like, I built 1 or 2 Jeeps, and even those were just kind of like, I barely got them to pass state inspection. I'm not Rock Crawler Joe. I'm not like Mud Bogger engine builder. I'm just a guy that likes it. I just like it. I like the trucks. I like the magazine. I like all that stuff. And the story goes on that like when I left his house, he called Rick Payway and said, you got to hire this kid. He just lives and breathes it.
Yeah.
And I was sleeping in my XJ at this point.
Okay.
My parents had given me a Dodge Reliant K car.
Sweet. 2.5.
When I graduated from college, my dad's like, I bought you a car, and he showed me this car. And I was like, this is the car that like old farmers' wives drive. Not like, I need a truck, Dad. And he was like, well, you can have nothing or you can have this car. And I said, I love this car. This is the coolest car ever. And I drove that car. I delivered pizzas in it. There was a point in my life where I was living in my truck. I worked at a bakery in the morning. I would work on the truck all day, and I would deliver pizzas at night. And if you've done any of those things, you know that delivering pizzas destroys your car,
right?
Because you're just in and out of the door, and but you make lots of money because you're just bringing in dough, like you're making cash tips all day long.
Yep.
When you're working on your truck all day, like your hands are all busted open and have grease ground in them. And then when you work at a bakery, you're kneading bread and it cleans your hands. So it's kind of disgusting, but I would like wake up in the morning in my truck, get in my car, go to the bakery, knead dough all day, come home, work on the truck, then go deliver pizzas at night. There was a year in my life that I had 12 jobs in 12 months.
Okay.
Some of those jobs I had for like 3 days.
And this is post-college.
This was after college.
After college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just did all types of stuff. And I had an art degree. I worked at a bronze foundry. I worked at a museum helping install artwork. There was a point where I had a job offer. I was installing some art at this art museum, and an artist, this kind of big artist guy from New York, was like, I want you to come to New York and be my assistant. And I was like, well, how much does it pay? And he was like, I won't pay you. He said, I will give you a place to work and a place to stay, but I won't pay you. You will have to get another job if you want cash. Right. And I was like, but it's really expensive to live in New York. He was like, yes, but I can't afford to pay you. And I said, well, is there parking? Can I bring my truck? He's like, no, you have to ride the subway. You can't. And I said, nope, not going.
Yeah, too much.
And it blew his mind. He was
Really?
like, why are you not taking this job? I said, I don't want to leave my truck at home. I want to stay here and work on my truck and like do this off-road thing as well as do the art thing. And he was just like, rah. And I looked back and I'm like, well, that wasn't the choice for me. So I did all these jobs. I dated this girl. We moved to Denver. We broke up. I headed west. I did this like 2.5 months living in my car. I met Ned Bacon. I ended up in Portland, and I got a job, and that's when I got a hold of Rick Payway and was like, hey, Ned told me to get a hold of you to write articles. And he was like, okay, send me an article. So, and there was no like, I feel like, because later I became the editor of the magazine, and I would have people like, I want to write for the magazine.
Right.
I'm like, okay, send me an article. Well, what do you want? I'm like, if you read the magazine,
right.
You know what I want.
Right.
If you don't know what I want from reading the magazine, then it's probably not going to work out.
That's a good vetting process.
Like, and I would send stuff to Rick, and he'd be like, okay, you need to trim it down a little bit, or don't send me so many photos. And I was like, okay. But like, when people would send you stories with no captions or stories that don't make any sense, like you read the magazine, it's only 2 or 3 pages
right.
of an article. And once you kind of learn that, like, oh, he needs captions for the art, like captions about the vehicle or about the trail ride.
The captions are everything.
Yeah.
It's really
so,
important.
like, I just kind of picked it up and started like, I would do a feature, and he'd be like, all right, send me a tech article. All right, do that. All right, go to this event and cover it. All right, I'll do that.
Cool.
And like, in the beginning, I would spend weeks sorting through photos and trying to pick and this is also back when we shot everything on slide film.
Wow.
This is before digital.
That's
so
big.
This is probably 20 years ago.
So you're getting them developed, and you're looking with your little...
Yeah. You lay them all out on a slide table, and you look at them, and you're like, well, this one looks cool, but this one's just a little bit cooler.
Wow, that is more of a challenging.
And then like, by the time I left the magazine, I could be like, boom, 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 like, these 13 photos.
Yeah.
Captions, story done. So...
So what year were you editor?
Well, I moved to LA 2002.
Okay.
And I was with Peterson's until about 14.
Wow. So that's a good run.
And there was a part, and I went from feature editor to tech editor to editor-in-chief, and then I was editor-at-large, and then I don't write for the magazine.
Right.
I go on Ultimate Adventure.
Yeah.
And I know the guys, and I talk to my buddies from the magazine. But it's hard because, like, print is dying.
I know, and like I wonder about that, because I attribute definitely like my love for 4x4s to that magazine, to Peterson's. Because when I was little, I'm talking like 7 years old, my dad would get the magazine, and if it wasn't for my dad having this magazine with cool looking Jeeps and trucks on the cover, me going like, it's basically like how I learned to read.
Yeah, my brother had the subscription, and I would read his.
But I wonder, like, kids today, I mean, not that my kids are picking up magazines that I have laying around the house, but...
No, but they're watching Dirt every day.
Yeah, that's right. That's why it's so powerful, man, because... so let's talk about that now that we're just on the show. So show developed on YouTube, then it went...
So MotorTrend had a channel on YouTube, and...
Pretty big channel.
That was huge.
Yeah.
We were doing... Like, most of our shows were getting 1 million views.
Yeah.
Most of our episodes were almost 1 million views. And I want to say there was a point we had 5 million subscribers.
Wow, that's really good.
Like, to do what we wanted to do, we had to go to another level. And the idea was, well, let's make it a paid to view website.
Yep.
Like a paywall. And it was originally called MotorTrend on Demand. And that, it ticked a lot of people off because everybody just wants everything for free.
Right.
But I kind of looked at it the same way as magazines. It's like, well, you can't buy a magazine for free.
Right.
You can get the magazine articles for free. And like, it can't be free because we have to like build trucks or go to events. There's some baby birds in my
that's awesome.
in my shop, and whenever the mom comes and feeds them, they make all that noise. So, and so we had to make it a pay-to-view thing, and that was hard because as like the show host, you want the show in front of your fans and your viewers, and we were integrating companies and sponsors, and sometimes that worked good, and sometimes it just felt weird, and
right.
So we were like, well, if we get subscribers, if we can get people to pay, then we don't have to feel like we're like, today brought to you by the Yokohama Tire or like the off-road light of choice or whatever. It's like you could just kind of like do what you wanted to do, put whatever tires on.
Let's talk about that really quick, because like on that topic, it's not free. So when you see a lot of content like that's actually regularly semi-professionally produced content on YouTube, there's some sort of monetization that happens, often not through YouTube.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
full disclosure, I don't hardly watch stuff on YouTube or television. I grew up watching television, and now I'm kind of over watching. Like, it's weird. I have a TV show, and I just don't really watch a whole lot of stuff.
It's okay.
But yeah.
But just around the cost. Like, so it does cost money.
It costs money. People can make money off of YouTube. You can make money from companies that want to, like, pay you to show their thing. But I think that's the issue there, is that people as viewers can't always discern when is this person being paid to tell me they like this product,
right?
And when are they being honest with these products?
That's right.
And at the same time, the influencers, like, they don't always realize what they're giving up by taking that.
Right.
Like, if you're like, oh, send me those tires and I'll say they're great. It's like, yeah, but what if they're not great?
Right.
Well, I didn't pay for them, so I got to say they're great. It's like, so then all of a sudden you're lying to your viewers.
Right.
So, and that's
like a little bit of the predicament you didn't want to be in.
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like there's a happy medium to go, yeah, we work with quality vetted companies in a perfect world. Right. But I get the tension. Like, same with us. Like, when we produce our content, it's super bad, but it still costs money, and it's like it takes a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
Like to produce stuff.
Yeah, and everybody thinks that, like, I get asked all the time, how do I get sponsored? It's like, well, what are you going to give me? What are you going to, like, if I'm a company, say I'm Fred Incorporated, and you come to me and you're like, I'd like you to sponsor me. I'm like, okay, what are you giving me?
That's right.
And they're like, well, I'll put your sticker on my truck. Don't care.
Right.
Well, I will go to every forum and tell them that your product's great. Nope. I'll put you in on the video. How many views do you have? I got it, like 100? Nope.
Right.
It's like, you need to have an audience. Like, being sponsored is selling your audience. Mm-hmm. And your audience wants you to say, is that thing good?
Right.
Like, so you have to be able to go to your sponsor and say, hey, I want to put your stuff on my Jeep. And if it works great, I'm going to tell my fans, hey, this thing works great. And if it works like crap, I'm going to not even talk about it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to box it back up and send it back to you. Mm-hmm. Or I'll call you and be like, hey, this thing is not working. Like, am I doing it wrong? Or can we fix it? Or is it not right? And it's hard for me because a lot of stuff we build is not your basic bolt-on. Like, this Jeep here behind us is a Wrangler YJ with a Willys wagon body on it, and I have a company's suspension on it. Well, it turns out it all works great. Right. But there's times where it's like, the company's like, well, I didn't design that to do that. Yeah. And so you have to be a bit more transparent with your fans and with your sponsors, so that everybody is like, okay, like, I get it. He's not using it the way he normally would, but he's still talking about it. And the fans are like, well, can I put that same wheel on my JK because you have it under your JK? Well, not really, because my JK's got 1 tons and they're 8 lug, where for you, they're stock and it's 5 lug. But that company does make that wheel in a 5 lug. So you have to kind of like constantly be talking to all the different parties.
Right.
And
early days, so then you went to this paywall subscription base, and that freed up some of the sponsor stuff.
Well, early days we had no sponsors at all.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden we had sales guys that were like, let's sell sponsors into this. And I was like, okay. And then it like snowballed. And I was like, well, this is not working because you're selling, like now I have to talk about 15 different companies in a 7-minute video.
That's a big challenge.
And then I was like, how about we get companies involved that actually makes sense for what I'm doing?
Right.
And you can watch different videos and you can be like, this is obviously a sponsored plug, because I was like, there was some growing pains. We were like, and then we got to a point where I'm like, I'm building something. I need this tire. Why don't you call this company and ask them if they want to be involved?
Right.
And so you're constantly trying to struggle to get everybody. And then when we went to the paywall where the viewers are subscribing, and it's like $1 a month.
Right, it's very,
it's
I think it's really reasonable.
Then we were like, we don't have to use sponsors if it doesn't make sense for the show. If it does make sense for the show, if a company, like right now the show is sponsored by Tire Rack. And we try to use tires that Tire Rack sells.
Yep.
That doesn't mean we only use tires that Tire Rack sells. Because there's times I want a truck on 54s. And Tire Rack, great company, will send you tires for your normal Suburban and SUV all day long. When you're building a 54-inch tall mud truck, they don't actually have that tire. But we just kind of make an agreement that, like, look, if I can use your tires, I will, and I'll try to use it as much as I can.
Right.
But there's going to be builds where, like, the creative of the show can't be hogtied by the sponsors.
Yep, I like that. That's cool.
And that's hard for beginner influencers to wrap their head around.
Right.
Because that's where you just have to say, look, this is the vision of the thing, and it's either going to go or it's not. And people, like, they get a taste of a little bit of support, and then they throw everything out the window, and it's like...
And one thing I love about your show is it's like... You guys have some really wacky ideas, and I'm sure, like, do you get feedback on, like, that show didn't work, like, don't do more of those, or is it just like you filter, like, read through the comments and interact with people? Like, how do you get inspiration for episodes?
I've never been one to read the comments, and I have friends that would read them and get all worked up and mad, and I was like, it's hard enough for me to, like, read the comments on an Instagram post.
Right.
So I'd never read them when we were on YouTube. And when we are laying out the creative for the next season, we just try to have a balance. You try to have a Jeep driving underwater mixed with like a rescue of an old vehicle that a kid could find on a farm, with the build of a brand new Nissan Titan on whatever. Yeah. Like, I kind of do the same thing I did at the magazine. It's like, let's get a little variety. This one's going to be mind-blowing ridiculous, and someone's going to hate it because it's too ridiculous. And this one's going to be a Wagoneer on like 31s, and someone's going to hate it because it's not big enough. And it's like, but I will get a message from somebody that says, that's my favorite video. That's my favorite video. So I just am like, look, you just got to be diverse and have some meat, have some potatoes, have some salad.
How was Indonesia, man?
Indonesia was rad, and
that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, and that was kind of another thing. It's like the MotorTrend eventually became one of the Discovery Channel's channels. There used to be a Discovery Channel called Velocity, which was all their car stuff. Got it. And then Velocity got renamed MotorTrend. And the MotorTrend app, which is the part where you can see my show, is still an online. Basically, MotorTrend On Demand, which was the pay-to-view thing, was working, and Discovery was like, we want some of that. So let's merge, buy into it, etc. And
then they brought all their, like, a lot of their shows into that same
yes,
platform.
yeah. So if you get the app, there's like 25,000 hours of cars.
It's
something ridiculous. I don't know. I don't even know what it is. It's probably 1 million hours for all I know. But like, there's everything on there. Like, I go on there once every now and then, and I'm like, geez, there's like 30 new shows here.
Right.
Like, and I don't even watch half the stuff, and I really should, because I'm one of the guys that helped start it. And I'm just like, wow, that sounds neat. And there's like documentaries, there's racing, there's tons of different car stuff. There's diverse, all this stuff. And Discovery saw this with MotorTrend, and they merged with them, and they renamed the Velocity channel MotorTrend. So we are the MotorTrend app. If you sign up for the MotorTrend app, you can watch it on your phone, you can watch it on your computer, you can watch it on probably through your television if you know how to hook all that stuff up. I think you can get it through Amazon Prime. You can watch the show. And
I noticed every so often, like, they populate an episode onto YouTube.
There's still some episodes that are on YouTube. Like, I think the underwater Jeep, which was the biggest thing I ever did, which was literally drive a Jeep underwater, 12 feet of water. The last I checked was almost at 10 million views.
Wow. And that was a successful venture?
Oh, yes. That was
amazing.
The most successful thing.
More so than your river crossing?
When there was a guy here hooking up the telephone line, and he was asking me what I did, and I told him I did this off-road show, and he didn't hear about it. I said, well, I drove a Jeep underwater. He was like, I saw that. And I was like, yeah. Like, that's the type of thing that, like, I guess that'll be my claim to fame. I drove a Jeep underwater. And I actually did it twice, because the first time we got stuck, so we had to go and do it at a different pond.
Okay.
But the point of my story, what was I talking about? Oh, so we sometimes put shows on YouTube and on the Velocity channel, which is now the MotorTrend channel. So there's like that thing that's on your television when you sign up for cable, I guess. Mm-hmm. Every Friday they have been airing a Dirt Every Day on there.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's awesome.
Which is, they're basically airing it on there to try and get people to buy the app.
Yep.
So that you can watch and those are like a couple of years old. So the idea is they'll air it as bait to get people to buy the app, so you can go watch Dirt Every Day on your phone or your computer.
One thing I also deeply appreciate as a dad with 4 kids, your stuff is always family friendly. Like, you talk to Steve.
I don't like cursing. Like, I still feel bad that I said that thing about Denver like 10 minutes ago. But yeah, we don't curse on the show. We're not like, there's not this ego where I'm trying to, like, I don't even like to compete with Dave, my co-host. Right. I try to keep it, like, the whole point of it is just to have fun. Like, to me, four-wheeling's fun, so I want to show that to the fans, to the viewers. I don't need, like, to win. Like, that was always like, when we did that very first Dirt Every Day with Roadkill, they were like, well, who won? And I was like, I don't know. It's like, it doesn't matter. We all beat the budget. Right. And they were like, no, we got to pick a winner. And I was like, okay, you guys can win, and because it's your show. Yeah. And but yeah, I was never like, I didn't really care about the winning part of it. I cared about, like, making it. I want people to watch the show and be like, that's fun. I'm going to buy a Jeep or a truck or a Scout, and I'm going to fix it up.
That's right.
And
what's super important, again, though, is, like, I know, like, Steve Sanders, his boys, like, every time I see that guy, he's like, oh, my kids love Dirt Every Day. And then, like, one of my guys, Mattio, he's got a little son, and, like, it's, like, their favorite thing to consume. Yeah. Like, to just watch and be inspired by. And I think that's so important for young people to go. Because, like, we talk about this a lot, like, interest in driving is down. Like, there's so many 16-year-olds that don't even want to get their license because they can just ride
I hear that, but I don't know if that's as true in the rest of America as the. Like,
exactly.
I feel like those are studies that happen in New York and LA. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but you're doing this study in New York and LA. Go out to Iowa. Go to, like, North Dakota.
That's right.
You're still going to find a kid that's like, yeah, I want a phone, but I also need a pickup truck because I want to go peel out and see my friends and go do stupid stuff. So I don't feel like it's as doomsday about cars as a lot of people.
Particularly in off-roading. So let's